My name is Dustin Wheeler, and my family calls me Duck Tuck. My love of wine created the Duck Vine. The joy and passion I have for wine is a bottle of knowledge I want to share with you. Let me be your favorite certified sommelier and pour you a big glass of edutainment, so you can sit back, swirl it, sniff it, and sip it as we ducks fly together through the wine world. Let's duck and go! Hey everybody, today I have the honor of bringing to you an interview with Jessica West, the winemaker coming out of Approachment Wine Company, a project with her and her husband Paden. You'll get to hear more about that over the next 30 to 40 minutes. But I got to meet Jess personally in Charleston, South Carolina, when they brought some of their wines that I'd never heard of from them, and have quickly become the best-selling wines in our shop. These are amazing wines, but in our series of episodes that we've been having, from the grapes in the vineyard all the way to final product, it's so cool to have a winemaker's perspective. So sit back, enjoy, and then go check out Approachment Wine for yourself. Alrighty, duck friends. With me today, I have Jess from Approachment, as we talked about kind of in the intro. But I just kind of want to turn it over to her for a second, and if you would talk to us about how Approachment came to be and the process behind that.
Yeah, so my husband Paden and we work as winemakers in the Willamette Valley currently. So we make wine. I make wine for lots of different brands in Willamette Valley, and then Paden has a winemaking job for one brand, and then he also does some client work as well. So, we have this opportunity to work with lots of different vineyards in the Willamette Valley. So, in 21, we had some friends that have a vineyard in the South Willamette Valley, and they're like, "We have some Pinot Gris. Do you guys want some?" So we said, "Yes, let's make some Pinot Gris." And then we sort of caught the bug from there. We have been trained very differently, Peyton and I, in making wine. So I've been kind of classically trained, like California, and Paden has a very Burgundian background. So we thought, this could be interesting for us to bring our approaches together, or not. We thought maybe we could differ in some of our approaches. So we thought it could be interesting to have a brand where, we think of different ways of making wine together. So we started with the Pinot Gris, the skin contact, and we wanted to make a wine that was a little unique, that you don't see a lot of, not a total orange wine, but not a total just Pinot Gris. So just a little bit of skin contact. Because I've made wines similar to that, but nothing exactly like that. So we made the one wine in 21, and then in 22, we definitely caught the bug and we're like, let's make a bunch of different wines that we don't get to make all the time. And so I sort of took over the winemaking on the Pinot Gris and the Gamay and the Grenache, and the Syrah. Paden kind of takes that over at Benza. So he takes the lead on that. But we definitely work together on making all of the wines. So we often agree on things and we often disagree, and we get in some fights about stuff, but it's a really fun process, and it's really fun for us to kind of explore and play with different varieties that we don't make all the time. And because we make wines for other people, that's what we spend most of our time doing. It's fun to use Approachment to take some risks and play around with filtering, not filtering, using amphora, using some different oak, that kind of stuff. So it's been a really fun little experiment. I don't want to say experiment because we're very intentional about what we're doing, but it's fun that we get to play and kind of try different things.
Yeah, like it's your own thing. It sounds like
yes.
You do stuff for other people, so this is all your passion.
Yes, like we don't have to play it so safe.
Yeah, and I just to be clear for the listeners, don't take these experiments or anything like that as caution, because they have, for the last, let's see, I brought you guys in right at the end of May, so June, July, August, and September, your wine has been the top selling wine in my shop, and outselling by not just like bottles, by cases. So
I love
it's
that. That's
some fun
amazing.
wine. So you'll hear more, but definitely have them on your radar. I want to go back to, you talked about your California. He's kind of Burgundian. Is that because of where you trained? Was he in France and you were in California, or
No,
where did
it's
you get
we
your
were both in
styles?
Oregon. It's funny, Paige and I actually met. We have this little winemaking school in the Willamette Valley called Chemeketa, and we met there. They have a little winemaking program, so we met there. But then we basically got jobs working for people who, like my boss, who I still work for, that I worked for 10 years. He went to UC Davis. He grew up in California. He kind of started down there. So, and then has been in the Willamette Valley for like now 30 years, I think, or 28 years. So there's just a more new world, I guess I should say, kind of training on that end that I've sort of absorbed in the last 10 years. And then Paden spent 8 years with Isabelle Meunier, who trained under Dominique Lafon for many years. So Paden really, really downloaded that sort of like reductive Chardonnay, that really Burgundian kind of style of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay making for many years. So that's sort of his bread and butter. So it's kind of fun for him to like, take Syrah and Grenache and kind of like play around with that and like get some, put some modern spins on it, but also be like, what if we do make a little reductive notes here? So
Yeah,
that's basically the extent of our training.
gotcha.
But we've only worked in Oregon. Like we've really just spent both of our time just really focusing on Oregon and Pinot Noir. So that's kind of the fun part about what we've done is like we just really focused on Pinot Noir.
That's really I think it shows a lot in some of the things that we'll talk about today. Uh, just the influence of what's going on around us, and how even though you could be in one location, the wine world just really kind of comes at you in a unique way that you can have such different styles and be in the same place. So I think that's kind of unique.
Mhm.
With you talked about you're kind of working for other people, and then you have point of contact. How does that influence like where your wines are coming from? Because obviously you mentioned you got the four, and maybe I'll get a sneak peek and find out if there's more wine coming. I don't know yet, so it'll be a joy
Yep.
for both of us, me and the listeners, if there's more wine coming.
Yep.
But talk about that for us, because you guys have your own vines, your own vineyards. Where are you getting fruit from? Is it part of these other projects that lend fruit to you, or what's that process like?
Yeah. Well, we are spoiled because, I have many connections with vineyards in Willamette Valley. So the first 3 years of point of contact have come from vineyards that I've already worked with for many, many years in the Willamette Valley. And then for 24 vintage, the yeah, so we source all of our fruit basically, which I think is kind of a blessing because we get to make lots of choices. Like we get to work with different terroirs, different areas. Like we just have a very wide range of choices, which I think is really pretty fun. Um, Sorry, my dog is going nuts.
You're fine.
There's like a raccoon across the street. uh, so having owning a vineyard and farming a vineyard is like it's a whole other animal. So we're not quite like we're not really interested in doing that. But so yeah, it's been awesome to have access to different vineyards. But for 24 vintage, we have been able to kind of keep it in the family. So Paden works for Ben's Vineyard as the winemaker there, and they have a beautiful few acres of Pinot Gris that we're farming for point of contact this year, which feels like an upgrade. It's fully organic, and I get to basically make every single decision on the farming on that. So um, that's really great. And yeah, so Gamay, same. Like we just happen to just know the right people. Gamay is super hard to source in the Willamette Valley. It's very like there's not a lot of plantings of it, but we just we know a guy and he loves us, and we're like, thank you so much for giving us some Gamay. So we've just established really a good rapport with him, long-term relationship. And then, Grenache, like we have friends in Washington, and we call our friends, and our friends that make Pinot Noir in Oregon. We just, we kind of do each other favors, which is nice. So he asks us for Pinot Noir connections. We ask him, where can we get Grenache? Where can we get Syrah? And so, yeah, so that's kind of nice. So we've been able to sort of work together on trying, sampling. So Todd can sample in Washington for us and kind of like tell us about flavors if we can't get up there. So that's been a really nice connection for for sort of the long haul stuff that we can't always access all the time.
Awesome. So are you, you kind of touched on it for a second, where you said some of it seems like you can talk with the farmers or whoever's in that process and have some say in how the grapes are being made, because you mentioned organic.
Yeah.
Is that always the case, or is it sometimes the vineyard you just find the fruit that you love, or is it you get what you get and you don't throw a fit kind of a thing?
Sometimes, like with Benza, they have been working really hard. It takes a long time to get like a certified organic vineyard. I mean, it is like 10 years to like reach that point. So, I mean, most vineyards in Oregon everybody is mostly life certified. So like, we're not dealing with like a bunch of shitty fruit out there. We're dealing, with pretty good farming, but, yeah, like I can talk about how much what I want cropping and thinning and most, everyone kind of does what I say. I also pay for that. So, I'm willing to pay to have what I, to have what I want. So, and that's important to me. It's like, I will pay for this, but this is what I want done. So everyone's really open to it.
We talked, one of our recent episodes was on organic and biodynamic, and Todd touched on, today it's so expensive. No one's going to go out of their way to purposely harm the vineyards, but also it's so expensive to get certified that a lot of people, what I said was practice. You'll hear that term a lot. They practice organic but aren't certified,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So with that, you do have some control. It sounds like you've got some great relationships. Are you making decisions beforehand? Like, are you sitting here now thinking about next year and I want to make this kind of a wine, or point of contact kind of changed a bit, so I think I need to do this in the vineyards? Or is it, it's farming, so Mother Nature is kind of, I feel like, the big component player. Are you kind of waiting to see what she does before you pick your style of wine, or how does that come about?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a fun time because I'm just getting ready to pick that Pinot Gris probably on Saturday. So, and it'll be fun for me because it's a new fruit source and it's the best fruit that will ever have for point of contact. So I'm pretty excited about it, but I'm also very nervous because I'm like, I better not fuck this up because it is perfect. So I'm going to plan on kind of doing the same thing. However, it is a new fruit source. So there's always, you just kind of have to roll with it. So, I'm going to process it exactly the same, but the contact time could be different. There just could be some differences. Like the pressing could be a little bit different. Maybe, I choose a different yeast or something like that. But, there's always room for, wiggle room. Like you always have to be ready to make a change if something happens, especially with weather. I mean, something could happen between now and Saturday that could mess up the fruit, but hopefully not. I mean, the forecast looks good, but it's like we had a fire. We didn't have a fire. There was a fire in Central Oregon, which is like 200 miles away. It was pretty bad. And we had this like mild smoke cover a couple of weeks ago on days that were 95, that were like perfect ripening days here. But that smoke cover just really like delayed some ripening. So there's just these little things that can happen where we plan on the fruit kind of moving forward and developing, but then nothing happens. So we just have to kind of roll with it and be pragmatic about, what could happen. So we just have to be ready to punt when things happen.
Yeah. I had a very short stint at a winery in North Carolina, which is
Oh,
super super humid and like not the ideal place to be. But I remember we were talking about harvest, and uh, we had a date picked, and then there was rain coming, and then so we had to adjust the date for picking just because of that. And
hmm
I don't think people understand. We've talked about it in a couple episodes, but uh, vines have to kind of be like I say they have to be stressed, and then all of a sudden,
hmm
if it rains, it gives it everything it needs, and then all of a sudden they push that water into the berry, and then you get a kind of diluted juice. Is that kind of
hmm
like some of the things that you're talking about? Is that true? Am I
Absolutely.
remembering what the
Yeah.
gentleman said?
Like,
Hey, look at
yeah,
that.
rain is so beneficial for grapes and vines and roots. And certain amounts. We can get huge amounts of rain. It can be really scary. And you see a lot of people around here freak out when they see rain. They're just like, "Oh my god, we gotta pick fruit." But it's usually like can be very beneficial because it's just like the perfect amount of water that they need, and then they just kind of come out of they just yeah they come out of this
Yeah.
like, "Oh, hey, hi, we're happy." So it's nice to have these little bits of rain because we just have this so much heat right now. So they love it.
Um, So you talked about, and I'm really curious about this too, with this fruit coming through with the point of contact, and you might change your process this go around. So maybe different for the 24 vintage, but uh point of contact, tell the story about that, because if I remember, you do something with it, and you're looking for the point of when it hits that moment you're looking for, and that's kind of like behind the name.
Yeah. Um, so so I try to pick it like on the higher kind of brick side. When I say higher, it's like high 22s. A lot of Pinot Gris are like, just white wine. Sometimes they can be on the more acidic side. So like maybe lower bricks, lower alcohol, but we pick it on like the high 22 side. Because I'm not looking for um a lot of brightness necessarily, but I just want some like color and some like fleshiness out of it. So I try to pick it in that range. And then I destem it and then I put into a cold soak and I literally go in and taste it every few hours. When I say few, it's probably 8 hours, like 6 to 8 hours. When I'm in the winery and I'm like not at home sleeping, I taste it often just because I want to learn about it. And especially this year with the new sourcing, I'll probably taste a lot more frequently just to see like what is this doing. I'll evaluate the color a lot more, and then I just do a lot of tasting. And then there is just one point where the like phenolics and the fruit just sort of like meet, and that's the time to press. So I like to look for color and just like that little bit of like peach skin, kind of salty watermelon character, because I want this wine to be enjoyed like by itself also. Like it doesn't necessarily have to have food, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to drink like a red wine. So and I also want that like really pretty color. So I'm just looking for like a little bit of like texture, but not too much. So and every year has been a little bit different. We've done 36, we've done 42. So this will be really different. I mean, we'll see. I'm just gonna keep tasting and just kind of keep an eye on it and then decide pressing. Hopefully there's not like a middle of the night pressing decision where I'm like, shit, you guys, we gotta stay here and press this. But,
Yeah, I've heard stories about during harvest time. You're on call basically 24/7, but then once it's done, you can catch up on sleep. But there's
oh
there's not
yeah.
really much opportunity during it.
Oh yeah. It's like, okay, sorry guys, this is the time.
You did say something in there that I wanted to go back to. You said the you get it to like this fleshy component. So when I talk to people in the shop about this wine, for me, I tell them think of it as like peach and cantaloupe and like honeysuckle flowers. And I think if you if you think about biting into those fruits, they're that juicy, but they give you that texture. So yeah. I love hearing. I did a bridal shower this weekend, and I was telling them, like, there's no wrong answers in wine. You know, what you taste and what I taste is going to be different, but it's always fun to see there's connections between the two. So that was neat that she kind of. I feel like I'm doing my job correctly.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. It's awesome.
You talked about pressing and pulling. Could you basically like go through that process and then talk about like from there? We've touched on things, but not really delved into on previous episodes on like decisions on the press. You know, I just said, hey, you know, there's a press and the juice comes out, and then you know the next step. Are there different kinds of presses, and then once it's out, are like punch downs and pour overs? Are those a thing that you're doing, and the differences in those?
Yeah. Well, as far as the Pinot Gris goes, in that little cold soak, I do punch it down once just to mix it up, and you know, if I want to speed up the process a little bit. And as far as the reds go, you know, with Pinot, there's many kind of schools of thought about pump overs and punch downs. Some people are all about pump overs, some people are all about punch downs, but it's just kind of a preference. I don't know that there's a lot of like data on if one's more extracting than the other, but some people just like to match kind of some temperature with pump overs. And then, you know, it's interesting because, you know, we make so much Pinot Noir, but then when we talk about Grenache and Syrah, Paden and I have been talking about this a lot. Like, we kind of feel like we can kind of beat it up a little bit more at the beginning. So like, we're kind of doing a lot more treading, a lot more punch downs with like metal tools. We're really like kind of getting aggressive with that. And then like later on in the process, we're being a lot more gentle with it, like just very like one pump over, one punch down a day, and just sort of like letting it do its thing. Whereas with Pinot, we're kind of gentle the entire process. So we rarely crush Pinot. Most of the equipment in Oregon, we don't even own crushers. It's just a destemmer. So yeah, so you don't see a lot of people crushing Pinot. You see a lot of people using whole cluster, and just having like, you know, kind of gentler process. But yeah, there's definitely many schools of thought on pump overs versus punch downs and what's more gentle and what's more extracting. And my opinion is sort of like time and temperature is probably the most important factor. And then just making sure that you can manage your oxygen. I just think of it as kind of like coffee or tea. You know, it's like the longer you let it sit, the more flavor you're going to get. But that's extremely simple way to talk about it. So, but yeah, I think there's lots of different ways, and there's no right answer, you know, like, and there's, I think it's important to be pragmatic about that too, because sometimes wines need a pump over. It needs air. It needs, to be opened up a little bit sometimes, especially with whole cluster where you can't get a tool in there. You need to get a body in there to like really stomp it down, or you really need to get a pump in there. You need to get air flowing. So there's lots of different ways of kind of handling extraction.
I think most people, when they think about winemaking, all go back to I Love Lucy in that episode.
Oh yeah.
You know, so if you need some I Love Lucy volunteers, let us know. We'll come stomping.
It's so funny because we have some really young interns now that have never even heard of that.
Oh,
and we're like, oh no.
It's a crazy thing. Just I do have a daughter, and she's about to be 8 in a couple of weeks, and just seeing the generational gaps and things. And I saw NFL put up one recently. It had the rookies. They were holding a VHS and a cassette tape and a floppy disk, and they had no idea. They couldn't even give it a name. It was interesting to see.
Yeah, it
But
is.
wine is one of those things that, we talk about. People are still drinking bottles from, I mean, not still, but if you'll see on YouTube or whatever, someone finds a bottle or is gifted from the 1800s, like a porter deer or something, and
Hmm.
they'll try it. It's one of these unique things, and we've talked about it, that does have this ageability to it. And you'll hear some people with their presses, are been passed down, or the same press like in champagne that they've had forever. Is there things like that in the wine industry that stand out to you as things that have changed, or things that are just super consistent that have been done the same way since they've been invented?
Yeah, I mean, I think that um, there's certain people that really just only do whole cluster fermentations, and some of that I always kind of wonder if it's because in the 80s they just couldn't afford a destemmer, and so they just always did whole cluster, and then they just continued to do that kind of stuff. And so yeah, you do see that. And then I guess I didn't answer your question about the
No,
pressing
no.
either, but um, when it comes to pressing, yeah, there's also many schools of thought on that. There's basket presses. I use a bladder press. We only have the one press at our winery, but it's Europress. Love it. It's amazing. And every wine that we make, we press totally differently. And yeah, so we usually, the point of contact, we just put on a white wine cycle, which is a gentle cycle. And then the Gamay, I've been actually that'll be a new thing this year, but that usually is just a free run. So I don't drain it because it's a whole cluster, but I lightly press it, and then that's it. And then the hard press it just goes away. Um, and then, yeah, Grenache and Syrah, we just lightly press that, separate the hard press. But eventually we kind of integrate it back in because it ends up being just fine. But it's interesting to separate those things and kind of see how they evolve. But yeah, you see a lot of Euro presses and a lot of ladder presses and basket presses here. Um, but that's yeah, kind of the standard, I think.
So, talking about as wine ages and the industry is changing, how easy is it? And it's kind of a fun one since you're talking about 24 being different on point of contact. How
Hmm.
easy is it to keep things consistent vintage to vintage, or is that a thing that brings in, like, if you wanted to be consistent? We talk about big brands, they're just so huge that they can source, so they have a little bit more consistency. But could you touch on that, like how easy is it to keep things vintage to vintage similar?
I feel like for big brands, I imagine that's an art that I would have no idea I wouldn't know how to do that because they're just purchasing so many hundreds of tons of fruit from so many different vineyards. But I imagine they can just blend by number. Like they can just get the numbers and flavors together like a puzzle. For small lots like what Paden and I make, I kind of like in not inconsistencies, but I like vintage representation. I think it's cool to be able to talk about vintage and why why the heat at the end of the season helped, or why we got rain, or what that did, and why the flavors are this way. Or I think that's interesting to see, like, why the wine is this way because of what happened in the season. And I think it's really reflective of the vintage, and it's fun to talk about why why the wine is this way. And um I think that's the most fun part about making wine, is just seeing how the season evolves, and then getting to make decisions based on what's happening, you know, and then being like, I guess this is what the vintage is giving us, and so let's make the best thing that we can. Like, it's almost a challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah. um I had from Tendril
Hmm.
Wines, Mr. Tony come into the
Yeah,
shop.
yeah.
For those listening that don't know, Tony was very early in the history of Domaine Serene,
Hmm.
and if you look at their production from when he started to when he left and where it is now, like he even said the same thing. He Part of the reason he had to step away from that role was he said my mind process and how I think about wine just can't keep up with this volume of production. He's like, this isn't what I
Hmm.
do.
Yep.
So it's interesting. It's not all just science. There's an art and a form to it that you guys, your own medium, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you said it. You started kind of going into it, but is Approachment's approach to vintage should be as similar as possible, or are you willing to like go off the rails, or at that point, like, would you make the decision like if Point of Contact comes out this year and is very different, would you change the name, or kind of what's that like?
Oh, no, probably not. I mean, I guess I want to keep that style consistent. And yeah, I want to keep it as Pinot Gris, fleshy, skin contact, but minimal skin contact. So yeah, I guess in that way that will be a consistent skew. But I imagine it will change. It'll be a little bit different just because of sourcing and
Mm-hmm.
vintage. But the 21 vintage was far different from the 22 vintage. 22 and 23, I feel like we're also pretty different from each other. And then I think 24, but nuanced different, not vastly different. So I think just because I understand all the little tweaks that I made to each of them, like they're different, but I don't know if everyone would find them super different. But
Yeah,
um
when you're in it, you notice it. I feel like a whole lot more than someone that maybe doesn't try it every year, or is not fully responsible
yeah,
for it. Well,
yeah.
that is part of the fun of it. I might hold on to a couple bottles now and do some verticals of some Point of Contact, knowing that that's happening. Sounds
Yeah.
exciting. Speaking of things for the future, are there other wines? Because you mentioned the four. Are there other
Hmm.
wines in the future, or is there anything you can
Yes.
talk about on that side?
Yeah, so we just bottled a Chardonnay, which is kind of fun. So Paden is very good at making Chardonnay. So made a Chardonnay in 23 and basically uh yeah, carefully chose these he so he's like able to do these like really cool styles of oxidative and reductive, and then we kind of blended those two styles together
Oh.
to make something that's like ready to drink sooner, because normally he'll like over vintage a Chardonnay, but we're like, let's bottle it early and then like release it in like May. So we'll probably release it in like May. um but it's kind of an early release, like easy to drink, but still's got that like serious Chardonnay kind of flinty. um it's super fun. I'm really excited about it. So it's in Shiner, so we still have to label it and get it out in the world, but that's coming in May. And then we've been making sparkling wine since 23. So we have a Pinot Meunier um, in Tarage, so that will come in 2026. And then we have this year we made um, another Pinot Meunier and a Espaget, which is the champagne clone of Chardonnay. So we may do a little blending, but then in 2027 we'll have like probably two sparkling wines out in the market. So, and that's kind of nice because Benza has like all of the traditional method sparkling equipment. So we have um, a little step up, a leg up in that. So we
Yeah.
have an advantage for making sparkling wine in Oregon
Right.
because that equipment's very hard to find. And
Yeah.
but Oregon we just have such a good climate. We have all the good grape varieties to make really good sparkling wine, and I don't think the world understands that we have that and that you can get really awesome sparkling wine in Oregon. It is a little spendy, but we're
I
working on
mean,
that.
that's. I feel like that's just a part of it. I mean, uh, Not that everyone gets excited, but it's a process. And I was actually going to ask, and I think this kind of talks about it. But when you mentioned the equipment, I was going to ask, uh, when it comes to the riddling, are you getting, or do you have one of the pallets, or are you having a hand
Both.
turn?
So
Both.
we have both. We just upgraded to the gyros, which is nice because it goes way faster.
Yeah.
You can do it in several days versus 30 days of hand riddling. And so the hand riddling, it's nice if you only have like a little bit to do, and and there's still novelty to it, and there's still be some hand riddling for certain lots, some of the small stuff. But the gyros are so nice because they just, they shake them up and then they're ready to scourge. So yeah, there's been a little upgrade in equipment, and that's been really nice because so Paden, he makes sparkling wine for like several other people in the valley since he's one of the few that has the equipment. So it's kind of a custom service that he
Yeah.
offers as well.
Nice. Um, so, for those that don't know, you have some fun names for your wine. Point of Contact, we've talked about a couple times. Uh, and then you mentioned the Syrah, and you guys
Yep.
call that Wicked Garden. Do you have
Yes.
names picked out for the Chardonnay or any of the sparklings, or is that still to
No,
be
not
determined?
yet. Yeah, to be determined. We do need to get cute. I keep thinking, oh, that's so far off, that's so far off, but then I know it's gonna sneak up on us. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get cute probably.
And you do, your labels are gorgeous, and that's like, not only are the wines great, but when I'm presenting them to somebody in the shop, then they go, "Oh, the label, I love it." And so that's like an easy in that I can then talk about the wine. For your current cuvées, which came first? Was it the name or was it the art? And then they kind of fed into each other.
Um, I think it was the art. Well, for point of contact, they kind of came at the same time. I was just chatting with Drew one day, and we were trying to think of a name, and he was just like something like just call it point of contact, and I was like, I actually love that because it just makes so much sense, and it's kind of a play on words, and like that was like also in the process of creating the label and like commissioning the artist, and but then the gamay, that was a whole different process where I had a different piece of art made for that, which was this vineyard scape with like all these bright colors. And then when I started making the wine, I was like, this is stupid. This is making no sense. And I wanted a space person. So I was like, that let's get a space person. And then I was like, let's call it take up space for like so many reasons. And making that wine, we're just dumping whole clusters into a tank. And it's like you need this huge tank for that. So it takes up so much space. It's annoying because everyone's like, oh, but we can use that tank for like other stuff. And I'm like, sorry, we have to put the gamay in there. And so that kind of came later after, some brainstorming and yeah, and Wicked Garden, like if you saw Block 50, you'd be like, oh, this makes so much sense because it is just like this wacky like block of Syrah that like is it's crazy. But
I know the story of it, but I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
think most people would. Can you talk about Block 50 and the significance,
yeah,
and then like, you know, just what it is to you guys?
yeah. So Lake Lean Vineyard in Walla Walla is really very big, pristine vineyard, and it's really well farmed, but then there's just this block that they just don't do anything to it. They just let it grow wild. So it has these, it is trellised, but then they just let the vines sort of like overhang. I mean, it's like it's hard to describe. It just looks like a forest kind of. And it's not um it's interesting because it's everyone's kind of favorite. Everyone wants it, but somehow we got it because we were at the right place at the right time. And um it's also very tall, like all the fruit grows super high on it, so it's really hard for even me to be able to sample it. And so it's perfect for Paden because he's very tall. um so that's pretty fun, and we got that fruit literally by driving around, and all the best producers in Washington get it, which is really fun. So So we asked Brad, who manages it, and we're like, can we have that? And he's like, no. And then 2 weeks later, he was like, yes, you can have it. So it's really cool to have access to that. And we're also going to pick that this week on Wednesday. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah. And also Paden, he is a musician, and he went to Berklee College of Music, and one of the first songs he performed was Wicked Garden by Stone Temple Pilots. So there's like a little cross.
Oh, I didn't know that part of the story. That's neat.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this vineyard, and it's kind of like shared with a lot of other producers, and people want into this place, and it's like it's got that provenance. I imagine that has to put some limitations on you guys. What is the production size? Because I absolutely love that Syrah. It doesn't drink like your traditional Syrahs. It has this like elegance, this like velvetiness to it that's just really unique. But I'm imagining it's a little bit more limited than some of your other lines. Or
yeah,
am I crazy?
I think we made like 75 cases of that, and yeah, I think we're down to like 20. So
Yeah.
but we made it again 23, so we just bottled that recently. So, and that one's very different from 22. We added an amphora to that, so it's more whole cluster, more amphora, and it's a little bit bigger. And I think the 22 was kind of we're sort of like had a Pinot lens going into that. Like, okay, let's not go crazy with it. And then in 23, we're like, let's speed it up. Let's go nuts. Let's do whole cluster. Let's do amphora. Like, we kind of went balls to the walls on the 23, and so
That's
it's
neat.
much more Syrah like, but it's also very different. I mean, it's interesting because that block is it's so variable. It's not like big old berries. It's very like soft, pretty. Yeah.
I tell people it's like it's trying to go back to nature. I feel like we see so many of the vineyards and pictures of vineyards, and it's also like manicured and perfect. And I'm like, don't think about that for this one. Like it's
totally.
Yeah.
And if you're ever like on the road looking up at Lake Helene, you can just see Block 50 because it's like this neon green section. Like you can just see it from so far away. So it's really cool.
Oh, neat. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me. That was amazing information, I think, for the listeners, and got some exciting insights for things to come. And more point of contact in all of our future, as well as all the other wines. All of them are phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Even on my days off, like I haven't even had to do a lot of training with the staff, and like I'll check on my days off, and I'm like, yep, there went more.
So sweet.
Yeah. So if you guys don't have it in your area, is there a way for them to find it, or what's the best way if they haven't seen your labels, or to find out more information on you guys?
Our website, approachmentwines.com. We have all the wines available for sale in there. I can ship to most states. So, that's always an option. And emailing me, jessica@approachmentwines.com. I'm easily available. So any questions? Yeah.
If you're in the industry, give them a try. You won't regret it. And you have an Instagram too. You're pretty active on.
Yep. Approachment Wines.
Yeah. I loved, I went back and was just looking through, and I saw the time lapse of the artist when she painted Wicked Garden. And I thought that was kind of a cool kind of like perspective. It's probably like how the vineyard would have looked as it changed. So
totally. Yeah.
Are y'all doing anything fun coming up in Oregon? Got any like trade shows or anything that you guys are doing?
November we'll be at an event called Friendsgiving in McMinnville. There's lots of cool things in McMinnville. So that'll be like 12 really awesome small producers showing wines, like 2 wines each. So lots of cool food, paired bites. And what else do I have going on in November? A winemaker dinner at a place called Mount Tom in Eugene.
Well then
I'll be at Cho Vineyard. Yeah.
We'll have to get you back out to Charleston next year and do a
Yes.
wine dinner in Charleston so
Yeah,
people can meet
absolutely.
you. So
Yeah. Matt and I have just talked about coming out in spring. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate you and your time and for hanging out with me and letting the listeners
yeah.
get to hear your story and the story of Approachment. So thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you
that.
for having me. Yeah, it was great.
I just want to say thank you again to Jess and Approachment Wine. Please make sure to go give them a follow on social media. Check out their website if you're interested in their wines and you can't find them in your area. If you're in Charleston, South Carolina, come by Pinot and Provisions. I'll give you the hookup. I hope you had fun. Maybe you learned something, but the most important thing is we got to drink some wine. So until the next time, bye-bye, everybody.